Whenever a man says something incredibly misogynistic to me, my new favorite thing is to call them emotional or sensitive or hysterical, and then watch them get angrier and angrier, because the problem with misogynists and a lot of bigots is that they can dish it out, but they can't take it. Don't react to their hate, just give them a taste of their own medicine and just walk away. Or block them if you're on social media. So much fun.
Aren't you lying? No. In fact, aren't you a liar? No more questions, Your Honor.
Oh, that's interesting. I like to do the same thing, except I do it to militant misandrists, who are also massive hysterical bigots who get emotional the second you apply the basic logic a dog possesses to debunk their arguments. You see, most of these broads have nothing going on in their lives, so they like to conjure up imaginary little scenarios in their heads where they run into these so-called misogynists who don't really exist, and then create a story where they call them the most uninspired and boring insults imaginable and pretend to think that they care enough to provoke an emotional response. Meanwhile, all I have to do is call you a cat lady in training, and the next thing I know, you're posting a 2-minute long rant on TikTok about how men are just insecure bigots and how you demand society to accept you for the abundant life failure that you truly are. Meanwhile, after I've said my piece and successfully get under your skin, I move on with my life and go make myself a sandwich, comfortable in the knowledge knowing that my extreme lack of the English vocabulary was more than enough ammo to effectively ruin your entire day. It's so much fun.
This is beyond easy.
Video goes out to all of the ladies. At some point in your life, you're going to realize that you've been lied to. And the lie is that there is a hierarchy when it comes to relational status. The lie is that people who are coupled or married are somehow higher value, better, luckier than people who are single. I hear it from men in my comments all the time. You're going to die alone. No one's going to want you. Enjoy your cats. And for all the men writing to the comments, I keep my relational status ambiguous across my platform. I've been in the public space for over 25 years, and what I know for sure is, number one, it's nobody's business. And number two, it doesn't fucking matter. Because number three, this isn't my personal blog. I'm an educator. My work is based on facts and statistics and research. It's not even about me.
Liar! 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 Well, you're right about one thing, lady. I personally couldn't care less about your marital status. Regardless if you're married, divorced, or stuck in a dead-end relationship, or you're on a first-name basis with the overused marital age you got in your nightstand, it really doesn't matter. Your knowledge that you claim to have is based on biased studies that have no real weight in the real world. You cherry-pick your studies and prove that the irresponsible messages that you portray are right while ignoring the other side of the argument. This isn't about educating people. This is about your never-ending war to always be right. And that's why you take it personally when some troll in your comments section says things like you're going to die alone. Otherwise, you just ignore them instead of making pathetic attempts at flexing because you spent 20 minutes of your life Google searching research studies from compromised groups, universities, and government entities to prove something that's ultimately meaningless.
Women are waking up to a lie that's backed by the way, 40 years of massive research and data that confirms that marriage is really an institution that benefits men. Men report higher states of well-being when they're married. They outperform their single colleagues at work. They are healthier. They live longer. Every question that's asked shows statistically that marriage provides a net benefit for men. When we look at the women, the opposite is true.
Oh, really?
Wow, so you researched 40 years of data, huh? Well, I had no idea that the 1980s were the benchmark for the dawn of all humanity. But I guess that does explain hair metal, but you sure showed me, woman. I guess the thousands of years worth of historical data across numerous cultures and continents don't really count now, do they? Yes, in traditional marriages, men did benefit, but so did women. They were provided with a home, security, companionship, as well as warmth and trust. She was able to provide peace to her husband, who in turn would guide and protect the family. It wasn't a perfect system, but when it worked, society would benefit as a whole. Children who grew up in these homes were happier, healthier, and in some cases would go on to do amazing things, which is why millions of people are able to benefit from all civilization has to offer. But I guess that was just one gigantic conspiracy theory designed by men to prevent you from having the right to go work a job you can't stand, for a paycheck that doesn't give you enough money to afford rent, and a life of endless loneliness. Is there a point to anything you're saying, woman? Or are you just rambling to justify the life that you wasted?
Married women have more health issues, they die earlier, and they also report lower levels of happiness than their single friends. A lot of women are choosing intentionally to be single, and they are thriving in singledom. And while there's nothing wrong with wanting to be partnered, it's beautiful to watch women waking up to the lie and decentering men in romantic relationships and truly going out there and living their best lives. Go on, girl.
You go, girl! You get it, girl! You hear that? You got it, girl!
Hey, lady, what you're saying makes absolutely no sense. Single, childless, middle-aged women are some of the most miserable creatures on the face of the planet. And I don't need psychological research paper to prove this. It's all out there on social media. These broads can't help themselves but complain about their lives for hours on end. But let's pretend what you're saying is true. It'll be difficult, but I'm gonna go ahead and try. You're saying that a single, childless woman lives a longer life. And to me, that sounds incredibly awful. Now hear me out. A single childless woman who reaches the age of 80 is alone. She has no support and can barely move around on her own. She has no family to care for her. And what kind of a life is that? Even if a woman passes on a little too early, but she had a family that loves her and a man that cared for her and lived a fairly good life, wouldn't that be better than a broad who runs the risk of starving to death if she breaks a hip and nobody finds her? That sounds like the opposite of living your best life, but what do I know? I didn't do a 5-minute Google search on this subject.
Wish I could stay, but I got a thing. Bye.
My cousin chose the man in the man versus bear argument, but then changed her mind literally 10 minutes later. How it started was obviously we brought up the man versus bear argument. Me and my mom and my aunts and whatever, we're all talking about it. And she was like, I would choose the man. And all of us are like, that's crazy because I would choose the bear. This is not to say that men are entirely bad. That's not what this is about. Her at 15 was completely and utterly convinced that she could take a man one-on-one and win. It isn't a bad mindset to have. I mean, I wish I had that mindset, but I also do know my limits.
Wow. That's amazing.
Well, that's where you're wrong, sweetheart. The man versus bear argument actually does measure your opinion towards men, and if you choose the bear, you're saying most men, if not all men, are dangerous monsters who do nothing but unspeakable acts with impunity. That's the whole point of the question itself. We all know why you choose the bear, and it has nothing to do with your delusions that you could fight off a 600-pound creature that can run faster than you, swim, and climb trees, not to mention toss you around like a rag doll. You say this because regardless of your grip on reality, you just want to try and insult men as much as possible because you're incapable of empathy. You crave validation and you're addicted to your own personal sense of victimhood. So naturally, you tell men you choose the bear, even though in reality, we all know the truth. If you came across a bear in the woods, you'd be praying for a heavily armed man to come in and save you. It's not about which one is safer. It's about you needing to pointlessly knock men down a peg for having the nerve to exist.
My fiance, who's overhearing this conversation, was like, well, do you think you could take me? And she goes, yeah, easy. Mind you, my fiance is combat trained, 6 foot and almost 200 pounds. She was still completely convinced that she could take him. Talking about this while we were swimming that day. So she goes, okay, I'll see if I can pull you into the pool. They both get up and they go stand by the edge of the pool and we go, okay, well, whoever wins, I guess we'll see. I already knew, obviously, who was going to win. After about 3 minutes of going back and forth, pulling each other, whatever, my cousin inevitably goes in the pool. Shock on her face when she came up out of the water. She was like, maybe I do have a better chance with the bear.
You're not just wrong, you're stupid. Now wait just a minute. And you're ugly, just like your mum.
You have completely missed the point of this story, woman. You allowed your 15-year-old cousin to engage in horseplay on the edge of a pool deck with your fiance, who's apparently combat trained. In context for this story, I'm going to assume that means he goes to an MMA class once a week. And while you're trying to convince your cousin that being mauled by a bear is somehow preferable than running into a man in the woods, you neglect the fact that one thing you should not do is cheer people on as they engage in horseplay on a pool deck. Do you understand how unsafe that is? Your cousin could have easily slipped, hit her head on the side of the deck while falling into the pool, and suffered a closed head injury and run the risk of drowning, while you're cheering on in the name of an argument that you lost seconds after you opened your mouth. You are in no position to make any form of man versus bear argument when you have such a massive disregard for basic aquatic safety. And even the bear is looking at you in shame.
Shame on you, and shame on you, and shame on your whole ill-mannered town.
I swear to God, if I hear one more man say, not all men, to me, I'm gonna lose it. I feel like so many guys think that that one-liner is just so quirky and fun, and you can just whip it out anytime you're having a conversation with a woman. And recently it's become my boyfriend's go-to. Let's talk about what's wrong with that. From my experience, almost all of the men that I have had some kind of encounter with have a really hard time owning up and taking responsibility for their actions. The phrase, not all men, literally works to exclude men from having any kind of liability against their own actions, as well as the actions of fellow men. I feel like we all have a brain, and we all have eyes, and we know that not all men are rapists and abusers, because that would be absolutely insane, because that's not true. But in a lot of ways, all cis hetero men have contributed towards the oppression of women.
You! I will think of you as I throw up into the toilet.
Oh, you sweet little mentally challenged field mouse. You don't have a brain. Or if you do, it's one of the smoother variety. The phrase, not all men, isn't some quirky or cute response to your argument. And that's because there isn't anything quirky or cute about the accusations that you're making. You claim that, of course, not all men are inhuman monsters, but then you follow that up by saying that we're all responsible for your so-called oppression. But if that was the case, why are you allowed to get away with accusing all men of crimes and being the downfall of humanity? You'd think if that was the case, men would stand up and put an end to it. The men who run the social media companies would block your account. The men who employ you would fire you for having the gall to say such things, and the men who own the banks would foreclose on your property because you insulted them. But no, they don't do that because you're not oppressed and you have the freedom to say those things. And that's because a majority of men leave you alone to live your life without being bothered. And that is the opposite of oppressing women. So you're wrong. Not all men are evil bastards.
And this happens in the smallest day-to-day occurrences, like not actively listening to a woman's perspective and interjecting by saying not all men, not recognizing your privilege as a man, not challenging sexism, not sharing household and childcare duties equally. Like, the list literally goes on. So that's part of it. But I feel like where most women are coming from when they are generalizing a situation or a behavior to all men, it's because the majority of our experiences with men have been negative and traumatizing as fuck.
Oh, poor you.
It's honestly really sad, but every single woman that I have met has either been harassed by a man, abused in some capacity by a man, degraded by a man, undermined by a man. The list literally goes on. And it gets to a point where, yeah, you're gonna start to make generalizations because it's happening so frequently to so many women.
I don't think any of that's true.
I think it's safe to say that the more dramatic the language these women use, the less impact their experiences. We're living in an era where certain words are used so much that they've lost all meaning. Take the word harassed, for example. It used to imply that someone would go out of their way to relentlessly bother another. Now it means if an average guy walks up to a woman at a bar and that woman doesn't find him attractive, then that man is harassing her. If a man puts his foot down and tells his girlfriend that he doesn't want her to go on a girls' trip to Miami Beach during spring break, then he's controlling and abusive. And if a man does a better job to earn a promotion at a woman's workplace, then he undermined her. It's intentionally vague and emotionally charged, but ultimately it has zero meaning. And you can't take the individual experiences you had with individual men to judge the billions of men that roam this earth. Because believe it or not all men act like the ones you choose to have in your life.
And I feel like this goes back to having a brain part. If you know you don't do that, stop invalidating the female experience by coming at us with the not all men. Because it shows that you're not actively listening, like what I talked about earlier, or recognizing your privilege as a man, which is really frustrating and hurtful to us women. So next time, rather than trying to protect your fragile ego over a situation that didn't even involve you, how about you just try sitting back, listening, hearing what we're saying, and just saying, shit, I'm so sorry that happened. That's not fair. That sucks. We all have eyes and a brain, but sometimes I start to question the ear part. Use your ears, start listening, that's all we want.
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
I hate to break it to you, sister, but you don't know a thing about the male experience. You don't even want to take half a second to use your ears to recognize how good you have it in the Western world. You have more opportunities than men. You have more rights than men. You also get more validation and recognition than men. Men's accomplishments are constantly being disregarded, while we're also expected to maintain the world, fight your wars, and provide for you without saying a word. Our feelings don't matter. Our experiences don't matter, and our traumas, if we have them, don't matter. We're expected to do our collective duties while suffering in silence, and anytime we do open our mouths to express ourselves, we're seen as weak, pathetic, or liars. But unlike you, we don't feel the need to go on massive diatribes on TikTok to talk about how your last boyfriend was a toxic narcissist because he had the balls to tell you no. And we certainly don't feel the need to accuse all women of the toxic garbage that modern women needlessly promote. Because whether you like it or not, you are wrong. It's not all men. You just want to imagine that it is. And that's gonna do it for today's video, gentlemen and gents, and as always, if you find that my particular brand of humor is bringing you to the brink of laughter, then why don't you scroll on down and click that like and subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and leave a couple of comments, and share this video so we can give the good old-fashioned middle finger to the YouTube algorithm. Keep on shining on, you crazy diamonds, and until next time, peace out, homies.